detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room.
Possible GTA suspect there now, 4730 Crystal Springs Drive in the parking lot above the merry-go-round. Two males, no further.
They're playing our song.
Striping to a black Cadillac,
Music.
possibly exchanging plates. Vehicle license Utah 2904, California Paul William Norris 011. Code 2 incident 3196.
Wall Street units additional 211 in progress, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard, 1818 Southwest Moreland Boulevard.
1507 Roger. All units, 1507 is following a code 37 vehicle, 770 Regal 2-door.
37.
The southbound Harbor Freeway from the Hollywood Freeway. It is a 2-door Buick Regal.
Hey, Julie.
Tom Zebra Paul.
Woohoo! Mina in the house.
All units, citizen reports officer needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard.
Grateful
Citizen
you're all
reports
here
officer
tonight
needs help, 3742 West Martin Luther King Boulevard.
for this amazing,
3142.
amazing choir practice.
1181 in Hollywood, no Hollywood available. Domestic violence. 5129 Fountain Avenue. Code 2.
We're going to give everybody opportunity to come in. They're just getting the notification now from YouTube.
3921 Wilshire Boulevard. Vehicle taken from 84 Thunderbird White. False license 1 Lincoln Zebra John.
I love it. They're going to
415,
call for a
1
code,
Lincoln Zebra
Tom.
John, 415.
Listen to this, John.
Northbound Gramercy, 5 to 10 minutes ago. Two male Caucasians, 20 to 25 years. Both had guns. Number 1 wearing white pants and a black shirt. Incident 329 Wilshire Unit Handling identified.
245, possible code Tom, Ethan Alvarado.
Boom.
Oh, Tom. Robert?
Bob Gillam's in the house. Welcome to the interview room, everybody. We are so grateful that you are here this evening. Man, have we got a great, great program ahead tonight. We're going to talk about service with a sneer. We're going to tell war stories. We're going to laugh. We've got a lot of our colleagues, warriors, probably in the chat tonight. We've already seen a couple of our friends. And of course, make sure you get out and vote. They're eating the cats in Ohio. So you have to get out there, vote early to save more cats. Just FYI, so everybody. A big thank you to our mods. Always Miss Sophia, Teresa M., Maui Girl, Mimi, J2, and of course, Laura. We are so grateful to each and every one of you women. Without you, we cannot do this program. Put on your seatbelts because this is going to be full of laughter, full of just some really cool, funny stuff, and all true, all real. This is true crime, and these are our real stories. And we want to thank all of our subs, our Patreon members, and of course, our YouTube subscriber members. Without you, again, we love you as well. We ask one thing and only one thing. You hit that subscribe, that bell, so you get the notifications, and you pass this around to all of your social media networks. Tonight, as you can tell, I have my dear friend, retired homicide detective John Jay Lamb, Sergeant. He's a former colleague, and of course, one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life. We have had many, many great times together. And, you know, John came on before me, and we just want to give just a shout out to our colleagues. You're going to hear some stories tonight about Manfred. These will be Manfred stories. Rest in peace. We love him. But you're going to hear his voice tonight because we've got some radio traffic we're going to play. And we'll set it up for you when we get down there. But John has written this new book. And if you're not familiar with John's ability to write, he has a whole how many books do you have, John?
This is book number 8, and to all of your subscribers and the folks who in previous instances when we've been on, Chris, about every fourth comment is, you guys need to write a book. Well, yeah. I've written a book, and it's the first of what are going to be 4 volumes of my career in law enforcement. So I listened to you guys. I wrote the book, and it's called Service with a Sneer. And go ahead.
No, and we're going to talk deeply about this great book because I had a chance to read it. And you actually put my comment on the back. So I'm honored to even be a part of this work in terms of just saying, hey, this is a great piece. Funny, if you're a true crime fan, you are not going to want to not get this one. This is a really funny book. So we recommend it. The link is going to be below. It's there now. You can not only get it on Amazon, but you can get it through your publisher. So both of those links are down there. And forgive me for indulging this short bio here about John, but he's a retired homicide guy. He achieved the rank of sergeant, and he's been a very successful, not only just true crime police work, but mystery writer as well. He started his career in the United States Air Force as a security policeman, then became a sheriff's deputy in Southern California before transferring to OPD. And in fact, it was Riverside County where they just took that guy down for accidentally carrying some guns to a presidential rally.
And that was the very station I worked out of.
In Coachella.
I worked around Coachella. At the time Coachella had its own police department.
Oh.
But I'm acquainted with that region.
Hey.
A lot of growth since I was there.
And from there, you lateraled over to OPD, where old timers like Bob and you just Kraus, Green, Graff there, and Crooks, everybody, Jacobs,
Armand Doucette,
Ian,
Bobby George,
all Larry Fulmino, who saved my bacon. I can't tell you how many times he lifted a guy up who knocked me out. And I woke up and looked up, and Larry's got this guy choked out, lifting him about 3 inches off the ground. I'm going, and Larry leans over. He goes, "You all right, little buddy?" Like, what happened? But anyway, all you old timers, now I can call you old timers. Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
Yeah. Water seeks its own level. Well, another one. Here's another blast from the past. Who's Jack Resner?
Oh, love Jack.
Oh man, that dude was one cop.
He was a magnet.
He was just he'd roll out, and his dog was possessed by Beelzebub.
Zach, the big Zach attack. And that guy Jack rolled. Remember the gas station at Vista Way and Hill, and Jack rolled around the corner. So, 211 in progress. So that's Jack Resner. And we're going to have some really cool stuff to talk about tonight. But John, as a homicide guy, he's worked hundreds of cases. and he's been to thousands of death scenes throughout his, career. And he specialized in training, crime scene analysis, interrogation, hostage negotiations. We can talk about that. I was on one of his teams. Bomb scene investigations, officer-involved shootings, OISs, and he retired, like I said, as a sergeant. And he went on to have, and still has, a very successful writing career. His sweetheart, Joyce, was also a fingerprint expert with our agency, and she is just another amazing human being. But he's authored many books, and some of them were published by the division of Penguin Random House, which is a huge deal. But his new one here, which is right here with John on the cover, and you can't really tell that's Riverside because you probably did they
no, they
okay.
just it's a it's a digital photograph of a regular picture, and it did the job that I didn't need computers to do that. It was slightly blurred when it came out, but yes, that was me as a deputy sheriff in 1981.
Wow. Okay.
When I had hair and it was cinnamon brown.
Yeah, I can't believe you actually had hair, and you look like you've got, the old fish sticks for the sideburns going down here. You kind of look a little like Elvis. If we look a little closer to the scene, you have the glasses, everything happening there, with the exclusion of the pipe. And this is also this book recently won the 23 Claymore Award. Is that like a mine?
Actually, it's named after the original Scottish claymore, the great sword. But yeah, I like the mine too. But no, this was a writing competition out of a big writers conference in Nashville called Killer Nashville. And it won the 2023 award for best unpublished nonfiction. And so I was pretty jazzed by that. And so that's I had never entered a writing contest before, so I was very lucky.
You're very talented, and guys and gals, you're gonna absolutely love it. And those sideburns, though, those fish sticks, man, those things are they were pretty classy back in the day. But tell everybody why we wore mustaches. And that kind of, for the homicide guys. Whoops, there it goes. It's coming.
Poltergeist.
It's another story, another day.
We won't get into the Hunter Steakhouse. One of the reasons why homicide guys did it was if you were going into a decomp murder scene, you could put Vicks Vapo Rub into your mustache, and that somewhat cut the reek of the decomp. But most of us just wore mustaches because we just thought we looked cool, and it was in style. Almost all cops had them, including some that shouldn't have grown them, and we all had the long sideburns, and you can see how long the hair is. I mean, everybody pushed the hair to the limit. And as you can see, also, I'm smoking a pipe, which...
Remember Dallas?
Yes. Dallas. No, it was this. Dallas had a wig that I think purchased was probably a Spirit Halloween store. And he didn't use the best quality toupee glue.
He was my second FTO. Clint Johnson was my first FTO. And Dallas picked up after Clint. And I remember we rolled up on something, and Dallas got out of the car and his head was kind of tilted to the side. I'm like, that's kind of weird. And then he threw it over, and all of a sudden this big clump of hair came falling off to the other side. I was like, oh, this is a little bit different than Clint. You know,
He is. I remember the night he called out that he was in foot pursuit downtown. So we all screamed to cover him. And as we roll up, Dallas has got this guy face down on the sidewalk, handcuffing him. We jump out of our cars, run up, and say, "What's the crime, Dallas?" And he looks up at us and he says, "He said I had an ugly tooth." And one of the other cops said, "Was there a crime, Dallas?" And you can see the question mark appear above Dallas's head. At which point we're all getting back in our cop cars and driving away.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
I love it.
You've got this.
I love it. So, I want people to get to know John Lamb a little bit tonight. Is that okay with you?
Of course.
Okay. I think, I've read the book. I had the honor of reading it, and you had a tremendous amount of pre-law enforcement experience, obviously in the military as a military, security guy. But there was a eureka moment when you were a child growing up. Bring everybody into your circle a little bit about, your childhood. Where'd you grow up, and tell us about your early development.
When I was young, very young, realized early on that my mother had violent crazy she hadn't used yet. To just explain the background I grew up in, and maybe I can jump forward for a second.
Sure.
I was attending a psychological profiling course, and the instructor was describing the sort of environment that could create a serial killer. And what he said is that you had to, if there were two parents in the house, one had to either be a substance abuser or alcoholic, possibly recovering, and the other had to be physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive. And for me, I thought, this was eureka. Well, was this dude my neighbor? Had he looked in on my house? Because my father was started to get dry when I was 3 years old. He was an alcoholic. And when he got sober, he apparently lost his male equipment and his spine and never recovered them. And my mother was like Muhammad Ali. She could hurt you with her fists, but she could also say very cruel things too. And she was just a monster. So when I'm 4 years old, I developed a syndrome, a disease called leg calves Perthes. What it is essentially is a physical condition where the hip ball and socket begins to die because it's not getting enough blood flow. Well, the treatment in 1959 is to put me in a full leg brace. Couldn't bend my leg. Now I could, when I went to bed, took the brace off, plus an elevated shoe so that my leg is completely suspended. And the prospect initially was that I was probably going to be crippled. And I'm not using the term, whatever the current term is, politically correct. They just said you could be crippled. Well, I wore the brace for almost 4 years and recovered. So I'm 7, turning 8. I'm going to elementary school. And my mother has conceived this idea that she's going to get her children. I'm the eldest of 6 kids. That we're all going to be stars in Hollywood. And so she conceives the idea there's a school talent show that like 8 weeks after I'm out of the brace, she wants me to do an Irish jig and sing a song called The Mermaid, which was a whaling song from the 19th century. I could barely walk. I had only just gotten away from using a crutch. But my mother insisted I was going to learn that Irish jig. And when I didn't learn the Irish jig, I was beaten. And I'm not talking about a spank or a belt. I'm talking about beaten with shoes, appliance cords, punched repeatedly. And, I'm 7 or 8 years old. And, oh, by the way, you didn't put your hands up to defend yourself. And so these beatings went on and my performance didn't improve. So at that point, she said, fine, I'm not interested in you. And she turned her loving attentions on my younger brothers and sisters. Maybe a year later, I'm still to this day, I'm 69 years old. So 60 years have gone by. I still haven't figured out what I did when my mother sucker punched me and knocked one of my front teeth out. And knocked me out, by the way.
And how old were you
at that time?
9?
Standing in the kitchen. I still don't know what it was I did, but she punched me. I woke up. I had a missing front tooth. And when I came to, she was bending over me and she told me the story was that I was a clumsy oaf and I had fallen into the side of a kitchen counter. And I knocked it out myself. And she reminded me that if I didn't stick to that story, I had other teeth I could lose. And that is the kind of household I grew up in.
Where was your dad during all of this stuff?
Well, he's present. I guess he was just glad that she wasn't hitting him. I mean, he was just a drone, a non-entity. Mm-hmm. He'd go to work and he'd come back and he just really didn't care that these things were happening.
Do you think in those years, going through those experiences and obviously having to reflect back on that, is that what led you towards? Well, first of all, let me ask you this: where were you guys living at that time?
At that time, when I had my tooth knocked out, we were living in the San Gabriel Valley.
So you were in California at the time?
Yeah, we were in Southern California.
Okay.
Shortly thereafter, we moved to North Hollywood in the San Fernando Valley, which for those who are watching or unfamiliar with Southern California, San Fernando Valley is just north of some hills separating Hollywood from North Hollywood.
And so your mom had this vision that you were going to be, all the kids were going to be involved in Hollywood of some sort, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when did you have this, this aha moment that law enforcement was going to be in your future, or did that just happen? How did that come about?
Well, there was fortuitously, and I can even identify why I didn't turn bad. Is I was a very voracious reader even when I was young, and I loved Greek myths. And Greek myths, the heroes overcome bad things, and this is just, I just thought that if these bad things happen, if you persevere, you can eventually overcome. You read the children's version of the Odyssey, or any of the Greeks, Jason and the Argonauts. So these were heroic figures, but the actual lean toward law enforcement probably came when I was, call it 10 years old. We were living in the San Fernando Valley, and down the street, 2 houses down, LAPD cops showed up rolling code 3. The man that lived there was disabled. He'd been in a wheelchair, and he was an alcoholic. And his daughters had come home. I think they were in their late teens. come home to find him inside their little house, beaten to death. So LAPD descends on the scene, and they start talking to I think the guy was 19-year-old son. And apparently the cops asked a question he didn't want to answer. And he turned around and started to run. And he started running in the direction of our house. And he's got like 4 cops chasing him. And one of them got close enough to clip him in the back of the head with a nightstick. The guy went down on our lawn and the fight was on. This young man was not going to surrender until they clobbered him, got him in handcuffs. As it turns out, he had murdered his dad to get some money for some marijuana.
Oh, wow.
So I'm standing in my front yard. I've got the amazing backboneless man in my house. You know, he doesn't have a bone in him, and not exactly an example of manhood. And I got these 4 manly cops chasing this guy down. And it's just on some internal level, I just said, I want to be like those dudes. And I think that is what planted the seed. And just because they were so decisive and they chased this guy down, and it just impressed the daylights out of me.
Did you see what Julie just said?
What's this?
Other than knowing me as the widow of your former co-worker, I'm a professor of early childhood development. Thank you for candidly sharing your story. I don't think anybody's heard these stories, and this is why I wanted folks to kind of, because we know you as John Lamb, who one of the brightest guys, smartest guys, funniest guys, witty, yet so sincere from the inside out that I don't think people really got to know who you are. And so I agree with what Julie said, that, this is a candid conversation we're going to have tonight, because it's all going to lead into why this book has your voice in it so profoundly, and about all the observations of the stories that you're telling in this book about not only your colleagues, but it's a reflection of how you see the world through the lens of John Lamb. And so at 10 years old, you have that LAPD experience. Let's push forward to what moved you into the military? What brought you into the military?
I graduated from high school, a 3.7, I want to say, grade average. I mean, but nobody had insisted I go to college, and I wanted to be a cop. Well, my vision was 2400. I mean, Coke bottle lens, legally blind. And the minute I turned 18, Mommy and Daddy said that I had to begin popping $200 a month to stay in my bedroom, which I think that comes out to, like, in current money, $1,800 a month. Oh, by the way, that didn't include meals. Meanwhile, my younger brothers were being physically beaten. My youngest sister was being emotionally abused. But I don't think my mother could risk hitting her, because she was doing a lot of TV work, and you don't want to leave marks. The other reason I mention this, before we go any further, why I've shared this story of the child abuse is, to anyone who would have been looking, the child abuse would have been immediately visible. I was going to a Catholic school, and they knew what happened, but I guess they figured, well, Mom and Dad know what's best. But I wanted to share the idea that this could be happening next door to where you live. And my mother was a highly functioning sociopath. She could be in the middle of beating a child and the phone would ring and she'd step over to the phone and go, hello. I mean, it was chameleon-like behavior. And then the moment the phone call was over with, let's get back to beating the kid. So
when you got to high school, did you have nuns? Did you have all the nuns?
no, I went to a public school because actually when I was in 8th grade, the parish priest decided that if I wanted it, I could have a full scholarship to the Mission San Fernando to be a priest.
Wow.
I wasn't super enthused since my hope when, you're in 8th, 9th grade is that someday to see, a girl partially naked. That wasn't really going to happen in seminary. And so I didn't, I didn't have a vocation. Now, as it turns out, I probably would have been a good priest. I mean, other than,
Father Lamb.
Yeah. Well, man, what did they call me there when I talked to people?
The Lamb?
They would call me Father Lamb. Let's get Father John in here when we were.
Father John. And,
but I got out of my house because, well, I wasn't going to pop, the equivalent of $1,800 a month to share a bedroom with my dope smoking brother. So I joined the Air Force.
And tell us about that experience. Did you have any funny stuff happen while you were where'd you get stationed? Where was your first station?
Well, all of Air Force basic training takes place at Lackland Air Force Base, which is on the south side of San Antonio, Texas. And that's also where the Security Police Academy is. So after I finished basic training and then I did my police academy, they all my friends are going places like Utapao, Thailand,
and Joe.
Going to Japan, going to Okinawa. Well, I get to take a 10-minute bus ride across Lackland Air Force Base to be the base police there.
At the base?
At the base, Lackland Base Police, which there were a bunch of gates, and we had to dress up in these, during the era, we wore these white police hats. We look like militant good humor ice cream men. And these white plastic hats. Now, San Antonio is hot and humid, so it's like wearing a sauna on your head. Mm-hmm. And we wore these white ascots and white gloves. And you can't imagine how quickly the gloves would get dirty. And because I was like the lowest member on the food chain, I worked gates, which basically was you stood and stared into headlights and, yeah, come in. Yeah, come in. And then if there was an officer, you'd go, yeah, salute them. And then periodically we'd have to search cars. And this is an era before latex gloves. And I am not going to share with your viewers. The only thing I will say is this. I found awful things and I discovered that cockroaches can live inside of automobiles.
It's still a family show. Go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I'm not going to go into that realm. But I was working
you had an experience where some guy showed up with a dog, right?
No, that was when I came back from England. My first arrest was in Lackland, and so a drunken civilian made a turn onto the base. I'm lucky to be alive because I was so bored with what I was doing. I had gotten into an automated mode, and I wasn't aware that the risk environment was. It was the lesson we learned as cops: always stay alert. Well, I wasn't, and this drunk pulled up, and I told him, "Hey, roll the window down," and he was just hammered. You could smell it through the closed window, and he leaned over and he turned and. I didn't see that as a danger sign up until I opened up the car door and saw that he'd grabbed a .357 Magnum. And the Air Force Police Academy was like, here's how you arrest people. Hold there. Let me read you your rights. Now you're under arrest. I mean, it was like, it didn't have any connection to reality. Fortunately, I forgot my training and yanked my gun out and told him, drop the gun or I'm going to blow your brains all over the inside of this car. And
did you say, sir?
No, and in fact, I might have used even coarser language than that, hard as that might be to believe. So the thing you're talking about in Texas, I was working a gate, and again, civilian pulls in, and he is hammered. Now, Randolph Air Force Base is on the north side of San Antonio, and it's 2.5-hour drive to Mexico. This guy is hammered and looks at me and says, is this how I get into America? And the penny drops for me. He's seen the American flag. He thinks it's a border crossing, but he must have crossed the border 2.5 hours earlier.
Wow.
So I said, yeah, where are you coming in from? Yeah, I went to Monterey to see the bullfights. Cool. Okay. And I noticed there's a dog laying on the back seat. So I go, your dog's like really well behaved. And he says, he's dead. I said, what? He's dead.
Oh.
I said, what, is this your dog? Oh, no. The story he tells me is he was driving from Monterey to wherever it was he crossed the border and had seen a dog that he felt was ailing. So he stopped his car and grabbed the dog to take it to a vet in Houston.
Oh my goodness. So he grabs the dog, puts him in the car.
The dog became obstreperous, and he said he choked the dog to calm it down. And, well, I guess I killed it, he said. Okay, well, here's a question. Why are you driving around with a dead dog that you don't own in the back of your car? And he says, are you an idiot? I'm looking for a pet cemetery. So, about that time, the town cops, the town surrounding that base was called Universal City. They pull up and they arrest him for DUI. And I tell them, hey, there's a dead dog in the back seat. And they go, well, why? I said, it's a long story, but he wants to take him to a pet cemetery. They say, yeah, whatever. The tow truck driver arrives, hooks the vehicle up, takes it off base. And he's about 40 yards away, and I see the truck stop and the driver get out and open up the back door. Now, I'm not going to say that I actually saw the dog come out, but the odds were about 100 to 1 that the dog never made it to a pet cemetery.
Poor pup. I hope Buddy doesn't hear that. He's sitting next to me where he's
my golden retriever. Yeah, he's horrified.
So let's fast forward here for a couple of minutes into the inspiration for service with a Sneer. And there's got to be, and we've got some tape here. There's got to be a couple of funny Manfred stories or two in here. I know that we've got a lot of friends in here that would love to hear some Manfred stuff. What do you got?
First time I'm on foot patrol with Manfred. It's early 1984, and we are walking toward the Pastime Bar, and which is in downtown Oceanside, and it's no longer operating under that name. I want to say it was 100 blocks South Hill Street. Then this big fight erupts in the doorway. So they're so wedged in there, we can't get our nightsticks in to break it up. And one of the combatants turns around and he has a broken pool cue. And he makes as if to hit Manfred. And just to clarify, Robert Manfred Olson, he's called Bob. He's also called Manfred. He makes as if to hit Manfred. And Manfred, like moving like a rattlesnake, reaches out and C-clamps, which is grabs the guy on either side of the neck. And
which was all legit back in the day.
this was
For clarity.
they frowned on it, but there were no rules that said you couldn't. You know, we used to do carotid sleepers all the time, which was
Dave Larson was notorious for it.
yeah. And so Manfred pops this guy. His eyes roll up. He hits the pavement. We break the fight up. Some of them go in the bar. Some of them go down the sidewalk. And so I turn and look at Manfred and I go, because Manfred's looking down at this guy. And say, what? And so Manfred kneels down and looks and he goes, ah, crap. Like with the same vigor that if you looked inside your bag of food from McDonald's and like they got the order wrong. And I go, what? He says, this guy isn't breathing. I go, what? Please tell me you're yanking my chain. No, he ain't breathing. Don't worry. And he then wrists his fist up and gives this guy a precardial thump. Bang, right on the chest. This guy sits up. And so Manfred pats him on the back and says, how you doing, man? He says, what happened? Manfred says, well, I killed you for a second, but you're okay now. You want the paramedics? The guy goes, am I under arrest? Manfred says, no, I figure it's a push. Can I go have another beer? Yeah, go have a beer. Yeah, I don't need paramedics then.
That's a Manfred story. That's reality. What was the inspiration? But didn't Manfred, wasn't there a big Donnybrook downtown and he handcuffed some Marine around a light pole?
The light pole, I wasn't there for that, but that was the famous story.
It was Manfred's story where he hooks this guy up. It was a big fight, and he goes to get back into the fray, I guess, and keep me honest here. And he handcuffs this Lance Corporal bag of donuts around a pole.
The light pole, yeah.
Goes back and gets in the fray. Everybody goes 10-8. Everybody goes back to it's the end of shift. He's back at his locker, and he has an epiphany.
He discovers he's missing a pair of handcuffs.
He discovers I'm missing a pair of handcuffs. What the heck? And next thing you know, he's going out the door, and everybody's like, where's Manfred going? And those of you that were there, Bob, if anybody, or Crooks, if anybody's in the chat, throw him that side of the coin. But the story goes, drives back down there. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning now. This guy is still passed out, handcuffed around the pole. And Manfred wakes him up. And this Marine looks up at him and goes, sir. And Manfred unhooks him. He goes, get out of here. Your face. Well, through the night, I heard that, drunk Marines were urinating on him and just horrific stuff throughout the evening. And everybody was like, tell me you didn't do that. Tell me. And Manfred
would tell these stories.
Oh, I know. He would tell everybody. Yeah.
He would, Manfred's story that he told me, I wasn't present for, but he was in the middle, and we would get to understand in downtown Oceanside, and the guys who are, watching now will attest to this. We'd get these huge swirling fights, and the response was to PR them, pound and release.
Yeah, public release.
You just whack them with nightsticks until you broke the fight up.
Well, we had a whole car with Larry and Dave Armour and everybody in the station wagon. Remember?
Yeah, the Goon Squad.
The Goon Squad.
And they.
Finish your story. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. Manfred gets a guy and handcuffs him to the door of the it was an older style cop car.
Oh, yeah.
And he then shoves another prisoner in the back. And Manfred starts to drive to the police station. And the passenger in the back leans forward. He says, "Officer, I got something I got to tell you." And Manfred says, "Oh, shut up. You know, no, this is really important." Manfred says, "Just keep it. I'm not interested in listening." This guy says, "But officer, I don't think that guy running next to the car can keep up much longer."
Yeah. He must have been a track star.
Yeah. Manfred stops the car, and this guy has been running, trying to keep up with the cop car.
And I heard when he got him back into the car, because it was the old Dodge handles, right?
Yeah.
Where you could remember the old push button handle.
Yeah.
And so he strapped him with a cuff to the handle, and Bob starts pulling away, and the crook is trying to run alongside the car like this. And the other guy in the back seat says, Officer, Manfred's like, shut up. Yeah. he puts him in the car, and he's like, man, the other crook turns to this guy. And I heard this from Bob. He goes, the other crook goes, "Man, you must be a track star."
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, Bob, that's hysterical.
I've got the Bob stories in the next book. Now, there are no Bob stories in this book. The next book is called Beach Blanket Bedlam. This book covers the time I worked in the Air Force and then for Riverside County Sheriffs.
This
book 2 will have Manfred stories. And
what's one of the funniest stories you got, or what's something that jumped out at you, old school, cop? And I think it's important to understand, when did you start your career? What year?
I started a civilian police career in 1979, and part of what motivated this book was I've spent the last 8 years working for a civilian police department here in Virginia. And I was working as the evidence custodian. Mm-hmm. And I saw how the law enforcement academies were run. And I would share stories about what my sheriff's academy was like. And they looked at me like I had just arrived from Alpha Centauri. They just, it couldn't have possibly been like that. And that is what made me sparked this idea in attempting to capture what cop work was like. And Michelle, thank you for saying that. What cop work was like when I started a civilian department in 1979. That the wholesale changes, like, can you imagine this? My academy, 1,000 people put in for 24 positions for the Riverside Sheriff's Department. So there were over 1,000 applicants. The Sheriff's Academy had a total of 76 people that began the academy because we had other agencies. We had open enrollees from colleges. We graduated 33. There's a 56 point something failure rate. Can you imagine that happening right now? Oh, DJ Potts and George Wallner.
Go. And Danny, it's great seeing you here tonight.
Yeah. Danny was a great cop.
Another amazing cop.
We've got some amazing cops watching here. Bobby Gilliam.
So much when he was in COV. He was one of my mentors. But
I wanted to write this to convey to people now what police academies were like. And they were savage. I mean, we would, like, when we would go running, and we would run in formation holding nightsticks at Port Arms. And every mile or so, our TAC officer would stop us, and the two guys who were in disfavor, who were carrying the equipment, one guy had put on martial arts armor, and the other guy would get a practice bamboo baton wrapped in fabric. and we'd go at it for 2 minutes. Just, the guy in the armor would attempt to attack the guy with a nightstick, and they would keep us fighting until there was a risk of serious injury, and bruises and welts were not considered serious injuries. So that is one of the things that sparked me with this book. And to also convey, so many of the young cops now don't know how to use their hands.
Yeah.
Dan Aarons just mentioned DJ Potts and George Woolner. Every one of us knew how to use our fists. It's a fact. We punched people. The only less lethal forms of force we had were nightsticks or these.
Yeah.
And we weren't reluctant. Oh, Frenchie and Ziggy, Frenchie Bassion.
Gloria. You're a troublemaker, young lady. I know. She's laughing at home because she knows. Go ahead.
To convey to people nowadays what cops were like. When we showed up someplace, and if there was trouble, there was no, roll me a supervisor, I'm going to use my taser, because there were no tasers. So.
Yeah, we didn't have tasers.
No,
it was gang fu. Remember?
It was.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how the world would react if they had video of how we had to take care of people on PCP, angel dust?
That was my first complaint I ever got. In fact, Dave Larson was there. It was over off of Bush Street, and it was some Pasole guy. He threw me over a couch. He threw Dave. We were all there. We called the cavalry, and I think it took like 5 or 6 of us to take the dude down.
Playing the Anvil chorus with nightsticks on them and flashlights.
It was bad. Yeah. But, I think people didn't understand as well that, policing back then was no different than it is today, other than they have more tools today, and they're not. I don't want to be critical of anybody on the street, because it is an amazing, crazy job, right? But I think our generation had better critical thinking skills. We could think through a problem, and our philosophy was always about, I'd rather talk you into the car than, to beat somebody into the car or tase them into the car or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we used, the skill set that God gave us, and we all had it. We all have it. And that was the ability to communicate with people. And it was, how many stories could we tell? You were a hostage negotiator, John. How many times, what's the longest you spent talking to somebody?
27 hours.
Yeah, 27 hours.
To get them. The Saguaro case. And interestingly enough, this was an ex-husband who took his ex-wife and her live-in boyfriend hostage with a handgun. And we talked to him. And eventually he wanted to come out, and part of the hostage negotiations protocol back when we did it was, when it came time for the hostage taker, the offender, to come out, you had to go out and be physically present at the scene, not like you're standing there, but they had to hear your voice physically and know that you had bought into the danger too. And this guy came out, and I will never forget, he came out, and because I told him, no, we're not going to handcuff you. Who are you kidding?
Right.
Dude, we're going to throw so many chains on you, you're going to look like the ghost of Jacob Marley. But hey, I'll lie to you and tell you, you're not going to get handcuffed. And he came out, and he was outraged. He was handcuffed because he said, I wanted to give you a hug. And I just thought, how much crack did you smoke in there? You and I are not friends. but you create the appearance of it. And
Yeah.
this guy went back. Remember, Chris, he did it a second time.
Yeah, he loved it. You loved him out of the house the first time. The second time, he was wiser.
Yeah, but I still got him out in a shorter amount of time.
Yeah,
Of course.
because he knew Father John was there.
What Father John explained to him was that unless you want to play hide and seek from the fellows with laser sights on the MP5, which will probably a game you'll lose.
Yeah.
This time I'll let you hug me.
I love it. I love it. We, the days that we were there, and just like life, I mean, there's always a season, right? It's constantly changing. And I was reading in Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, just yesterday, actually, where he talked about the only, things we can create and control is our attitude in any given circumstance. And I mean, I have such great friends like yourself. I mean, Joe, who's in the chat, I went to the academy with him, JJ Singer, who was kind of a interesting cat, great guy. Film at 11. I used to call him Film at 11. Phil Dumas, Filmo. And we just had such a camaraderie. Jack Brohammer, I mean, Pete Kopic. We were all of us. You older guys accepted all of the younger kids coming in. But here was the difference, I think, in terms of you guys taught us. I mean, if you had a problem, you could go into, Jacobs and say, hey, he was a detective at the time. Hey, this is what happened out here. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And for some reason, and I don't know how it happened, but I don't know if you remember, but, I was only in patrol the first 2 years of my career, and then they sent me into SES, as a vice detective. It was right after the Niemeyer situation. And, that job was just so draining. When looking back, statistically, I think that Oceanside was like one of the top 3 per capita most violent cities in the country.
Absolutely.
And I don't think people understood. I mean, there were weekends where you were a detective sergeant. There'd be like 30 robberies in a single weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And, us bouncing car to car or place to place, moment to moment was really just, okay, whatever, we're just going. And there were fights, when you get the 1st Marine Division out with 50,000 Marines and you cut them loose on a Friday, Saturday night into Sunday, I mean, it was rock and roll. And everything that came with it came with, that mentality. So I want to set up this radio call that you sent me here with Manfred. It's kind of scratchy in the beginning, but it gets a little easier. So set the play for what we're going to hear.
Okay, this tape dates from 1988. I had just rotated out of the Detective Bureau, and there had been a radio call to Leisure Village, which was in the extreme southeast portion of the city. It was a retirement community. We called it.
Go ahead, say it.
We called it Seizure Village because not every other day there'd be an unattended death up there. And so what had happened was a man had been joined to, I want to say they were Navy corpsmen. They were not They were military, and if memory serves correctly, they were Navy corpsmen, and there had been they had driven around, and these two Navy guys became annoyed with their passenger because he had promised to introduce them to girls. And after hours of driving around, no girls were forthcoming, and they decided to make the evening worth their while, since they'd wasted time on buying drinks and gasoline. They decided that they were going to rob him. So they pulled out a hammer and a knife and said, go to an ATM, want all your money. And he says, I don't have any money in my account. And so they say, well, you better come up with some money somehow, or we're going to beat you to death and stab you. And to prove their point, they began hitting him with a hammer and poking him with a knife. So this victim says, my parents, they live in Leisure Village. They'll give you money. And so they said, well, they better. So they drive out to Leisure Village, and as they get up to the gate, this victim stumbles from the car. He's bleeding. He's blood-stained clothing, and he's flailing his arms frantically, screaming, they're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me. At which point the suspect vehicle, which was a dark gray Pontiac Firebird, does a U-turn and takes off. So that's where we are. Manfred is, to give you the names of the people, Manfred is 3 David, as you'll hear this. That's his call sign. You'll recognize the voices of, you were 3 King?
I was 3 King because
you will recognize 3 King, and you will recognize 3 David if you've been listening closely tonight. So yeah, I think that sets it up.
I was a dog handler. I had IRC at that time, and set up the protocol on whenever there's a pursuit, why the canine handler takes the second car on the radio.
The canine handler, first of all, the first person in the pursuit needs to stay off the radio for the most part to focus on driving. You will occasionally get on the radio if you've seen something that no one else can see, such as people passing something back and forth, or a window goes down. But for the most part, the second unit is supposed to call the pursuit, and we wanted a canine in the second slot so that we could deploy the dog. So that's the reason there. And by our pursuit policy, supposedly there was ideally no more than 2 police cars involved. And if you believe that that was actually going to happen, I've got some blockbuster video stock I'll sell you. I mean, a high-speed pursuit of armed felons, any cop worth of salt is going to be, his or her salt is going to be in on it. So that is why Chris calls the pursuit.
So Bob is going to be in this. Rest in peace to our brother. We're going to hear him for a little bit. And he had already put out the type of car it possibly could have been. What's he say?
He thought it was a Camaro.
Yep.
And it was, but that year of manufacture, the Camaro and the Pontiac Firebird body types were nearly identical.
Yep. So here we go.
Can you give me any further description on the gray Camaro? Silver gray Camaro. It's got nails, so have labels on the back windows. And I'm still trying to work. The guy's pretty good up, and I'm trying to get more information from him. 10-4, is it pretty clean looking, sir? 10-9, I was disturbed.
Hey, David, is it pretty clean?
So, clean car.
You know, I have to interrupt just for a second. It's so great hearing his voice.
It really is.
And you still sound the same, to be honest with you. You know, just so everybody knows, I was 3 King, but I was driving home. So the canines, we take the dogs home. So I had literally just called out that, you know, I was out of service 10-7. And next thing you know, this whole thing is starting to go down and I'm listening. But so, you know, keep me honest here, John, as we're moving.
Yeah.
10-4.
Chris,
Go.
to explain that I'm downtown. So I'm about like 9 miles from where 9 miles as the crow flies from Leisure Village. I am downtown Oceanside. And the car I am looking at, I was driving northbound on what's now known as Coast Highway, but it was South Hill then. And I already had a strong sense they had come off of Oceanside Boulevard and then they had stopped for the light. And they looked at me and I looked at them, and it's kind of, we all knew what our positions in the universe were at that point. But I wanted to have more information before pouncing. So we're downtown. Part of the reason why we keep asking for Manfred for more information, and there's a problem, is Manfred is on a portable radio. And this was like one of the areas where we didn't have great reception with portable radios. So that clarifies it.
Station, I'm following a gray Camaro northbound on Hill Street, 300 South Hill, California 1, Edward Ida John, 751. It's gray, no window louvers, just deactivated by 2 Marines.
10-4 today, it's on a silver, section of gray Camaro northbound Hill, 300.
Is that Pat Boatman?
I think it was.
Make it stop 600 Mission.
And shout out to all of our dispatchers out there in the
Yeah.
world. You have saved our lives so many times. There is not enough thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is another example of just listening how calm, you know, everybody was.
10-4, 600 Mission, and it's 1129.
Affirmative, this is very Pontiac, but the fire looks like it could be a Camaro. You are familiar with the make.
And for got current registration 82 Pontiac to Jarrett Graves, Camp Pendleton.
Unfortunately, we're not 100% of the Camaro. It possibly could be a fiber.
2 David, copy.
David, we got a failure to be released on Mission Avenue, approaching I-5.
Put your belts on.
Mission approaching I-5.
Failure to yield.
59 to 10-4.
59 was southbound I-5 for Mission.
Southbound 5 for Mission.
This is old school, folks.
One day was rhythm, southbound I-5.
1 David was in at southbound 5.
Again, southbound, passing Oceanside Boulevard.
Southbound passing the boulevard.
So I'm going to take the radio. Straight to passing the boulevard now.
Passing the boulevard.
I was so young.
Driver person in white veil with black hair. A minute I tried to line her up, I took off.
Unit code 33 to David and Eddie in pursuit southbound 5.
Circular passing Cassidy Street.
Passing Cassidy.
Circular passing 78, coming up the Lost North, advise call set.
Passing 78, approaching Lost North.
In the number 2 lane, doing approximately 95.
Number 2 lane, approximately 95 miles an hour.
Okay, we're coming up down Avenue, still southbound, number 2 lane.
Southbound, number 2 lane, approaching Elm. Come on, 1 unit on the air, 3 Kings.
Past Elm Avenue, 95, still southbound.
Passing Elm, southbound.
Okay, so that was you. What were you saying?
First of all, we'll clarify that this pursuit has already crossed into another city. That we have crossed into the city south of Oceanside called Carlsbad. And what I could see as driving was that the driver and the passenger were passing something back and forth. And since we didn't know whether there was a firearm involved or whatever, I'm trying to let units behind me know what I'm seeing.
David advising passengers.
Still southbound, number 2 lane.
Passing camera.
Approaching Cannon Avenue, number 2 lane at 95 front.
Approaching Cannon.
This guy was cooking.
I know it's DSP and Atkins, it looks like this is going to keep going.
That's what we're on the canoe with them now.
We are past Cannon Avenue now. That's still 95 in the number 2 lane.
Now for passing Cannon.
Okay, we're approaching Palmer Airport Road, number 2 lane, still 95.
Approaching Palomar Airport Road.
John, the advisor, I don't have my partner, so if they bail out, you're going to have to take them on foot. No, we're past Palmer Airport Road, still southbound, number 2 lane, 95.
10 for passing Palomar Airport Road, number 2 lane, 95 miles an hour.
We got a good question here, Chris. Was this on back roads? No, this was on Interstate 5, and also Margaret makes an observation about understanding. Part of what you're hearing here, the diminished sound quality, is that this was on a cassette tape for 34 years.
Yeah.
And it was digitized. And so you're going to see some degradation in sound. We could all hear each other, with the exception of those instances where the siren is operating. And yeah, that would have an impact on ability. And I don't know if I mentioned also want to know if it was on back roads. No. Kelly, this was on Interstate 5, which is a 4-lane freeway, and going on at about 3 o'clock in the morning, would you say, Chris?
Yeah, it was.
And the freeway was mostly clear.
Yep. It was just basically one gigantic racetrack.
We're on the number 1 lane approaching Poinsettia.
Number 1 lane approaching Poinsettia.
Now, what's great about listening to this up close is dispatchers are a different breed as well. And their job our job is to focus on what's going on. John's job's focus on what's happening to the driver. John's maintaining, that front car's got to maintain, stay with this guy, but give him enough room in case he goes, sideways or, shots being fired and all the other stuff that comes with, law enforcement. The dogs guy, which was me, and I'm on the radio, I don't turn my siren on because the dog would start howling and you wouldn't be able to hear anything. I mean, dogs go nuts when those sirens go off. But John has his siren on and you can hear it every once in a while when he's talking. And anyway, the number 1 lane is the fast lane, and then it's 2, 3, and 4 is the slow lane. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 left to right. So everybody gets their bearing.
And we're about to cross into another jurisdiction. We're leaving the city of Carlsbad right now, entering the city of Leucadia, which is policed by the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. So we're moving.
And this will be important. That will be very important pretty soon here.
Southbound in the number 3 lane. Come on over, Phil.
Phil Dumas, film at 11.
And passing point steady now.
Passing point steady.
Coming up on the Lacasa Boulevard. Still southbound, number 2.
And that little beeping sound, that beep or whatever, that irritating sound, trust me, it drove all of us crazy too, but that's a repeater.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the sound going out to a repeater and sending it, back to, and that's why you get that little beep, that high pitch.
Lacasa Boulevard, southbound, number 2 lane.
Coming up to the Florida Boulevard, still number 2 lane at 100 plus miles an hour.
Approaching Arcadia Boulevard, 100 plus. Station 3 King.
Go ahead.
Our patrol out of position, unless we make it to Avenida de Lavalle.
So far, 27 headed this way. We are past the Florida Boulevard now. Still southbound. Stand by. Okay, we are past Leucadia Boulevard, approaching Encinitas Boulevard. Still south.
Approaching Encinitas.
John, can you still see this in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, there's one thing we don't mention. When we drove through Carlsbad, and this was when they said going past Cannon, for those who might remember, there were 2 Carlsbad cars that were attempting to inhibit the pursuit by, in California, it's called doing a round robin, which is driving across the lanes back and forth in a lazy sort of movement back and forth. Well, that kind of stops traffic when there's lots of cars. It doesn't work so well when there are no cars on the road. So the suspect vehicle passed right between these 2 Carlsbad cars, and I suddenly have a Carlsbad unit right in front of me. And if I hit the brakes, I'd have crashed. So what I did was I hit the gas even harder and passed this officer on the emergency lane. And so I'm in the right-hand emergency lane. And to my dying day, I will never forget the officer looking at me as I drive by going, it was, yeah. And the other thing yes, I can remember every bit of this, but I would ask the viewers, listen to the voices. Do you hear anybody shouting? Everybody is calm.
No cussing.
And, like at one point, Chris says, come on over, Phil. He's literally making room for Officer Dumas to come over. So, you know,
Maybe
if
it's
you
inspirational.
if you appreciate that we're talking while we're driving 100 miles an hour after potentially armed criminals. But yeah, I can remember every bit of this.
Just another day. Just another day in the job. It was awesome.
We're now in the number 3 lane.
Number 3 lane.
I don't know what he's intending to do.
I just said he rolled down his window, and I have no idea of what he intends to do.
Can you just roll the window down?
Somebody contacted Rick up ahead of us. Had him pull back and get shot. And we are still at Phoenix Boulevard passing southbound. And we're across at 112, I believe, right next to the suspect. Somebody needs to let him know what's going on.
Carlsbad 112.
Carlsbad 112. We're pursuing armed felons down the interstate. And the Carlsbad unit decides to violate like the county protocol and decides to drive up parallel to the suspect vehicle to get a good look at them. I mean, this is biblical stupidity. He has no idea because we haven't communicated with Carlsbad, so they don't know what we have. And so basically, as you'll hear, we have to tell him, stop behaving like a moron.
Rick King, Carlsbad advised Ziggler was a bill that was being passed.
We're approaching Encinitas Boulevard here. Still in the number 3 lane now. We have a lot of other agencies involved here.
How many agencies, John? And we had everybody coming. I guess it's kind of like when you turn the lights on and all the cockroaches go like that. Well, when there's a code 3 response to armed suspects headed southbound I-5, it's like, let's go, boys, girls, everybody.
I will never be able to prove it, but I know there was a Border Patrol car out there. And there was an Escondido car out there. And to give you some sense, Escondido was like 45 miles away by that point.
How did they get there?
They were at the jail. My guess would be they were at the jail and they shot down the 78 freeway to get involved.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But and San Diego PD was there, and yeah.
Everybody came for the party.
047 hours, KUI 649.
KUI 649.
Call sign for the Oceanside Police.
We're in the number 1 lane passing Santa Fe Drive. Come on over, John.
Number 1 lane, Santa Fe Drive.
We're in the number 2 lane. We're past Santa Fe Drive. Still southbound at about 95.
Stand for. Station 12, Sam.
We're past Birmingham Drive. Still southbound about 95 miles an hour.
Passing Birmingham.
By now, we're closer to San Diego than we are Oceanside.
Yeah, and how long did it take us to get there, right? I mean, maybe 10 minutes?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Hit the San
Diego. The area around Del Mar, and we are flying.
And having a blast.
Number 3 lane.
And OPD units are primary here. If you can let the sheriff's department know.
Poor Chris is attempting to, in his own way, say, it's our pursuit. Other units are now attempting to intrude in the pursuit, to put their own stamp on it.
And to stay back.
Yeah.
Stay back.
Station 4, Sam.
So approaching Manchester Avenue, still southbound at 95.
Sam 4, Manchester Avenue, 95. King.
So approaching Rancho Santa Fe.
Rancho Santa Fe. Highway Patrol is positioned at Villa de la Valle.
We're that close.
And 13, Sergeant Woodall. Can you stand by here?
Okay. Here's the deal. John is ahead of me. I'm behind John on the radio. And remember, I'm watching him, who's watching the bad guy. And all of a sudden, the sheriff car goes zoom. We're doing 95 miles an hour. Take it from there, John. You're ahead of me.
Now, as you described it, the fast lane is the number 1 lane, then slower lane is 2, 3. The number 4 lane is the one closest to the emergency lane and the guardrail. I'm behind the suspect vehicle. The sheriff's car comes barreling past me. Now, we'll follow this pursuit wherever it goes. The sheriff's car then pulls up right next to the suspect vehicle. Now, mind you, this is in an era before the pit maneuver had been taught.
This is 1988.
1988. The sheriff's car then he rams the suspect vehicle side to side, rams the suspect vehicle into the guardrail. My eyes are about the size of one of the characters from the old MGM cartoons. They have got to be this big. I can't believe what I'm seeing. He rams the suspect vehicle. The suspect vehicle brakes. As he comes back toward me, I side slip into the number 3 lane to avoid collision. I then look over. The suspect vehicle is right next to me. The driver is looking at me, and he rams me. At which point I figure, okay, you hit me first. Now I can hit you. And so I drive the side of my unit into his car and into the guardrail. And we're still traveling at this point, probably 85.
And by the way, as John said, we've never been trained in the pit maneuver in 1988. It was like, what's that? CHP would do their thing. We would turn it over. We were that close to having the chippies run this thing probably to the border. And you heard 12 Sam, who was Woody at the time, right? Woody was like, hey, just a couple of our guys up front, pass it off, basically, let them run. And then our job was to back off. We would have just, okay, let them keep running. They'll catch them.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
no, that wasn't supposed to be. The wizard showed up from you.
I call him I call him Mad Max, the road warrior, because the suspect vehicle and I are now, I'm shoving him into the guardrail. I look up and see that the sheriff's unit is right in front of us in a locked 4-wheel skid.
Yeah.
And at this point, I realize this is probably going to hurt a lot because we're about to crash at 70 miles an hour.
About 95 miles an hour.
Well, I thought we'd saw it. You had a better view of it than I did. I was busy.
Well, you know the movie Matrix?
Yeah.
Okay. Remember where he does
Yeah.
all this? All right. I'm behind you. I see this thing go by and I'm like, stand by. And next thing you know it's just everything is going everywhere. You're this way, you're that, they're that way. And I was going so fast, I had to go, I cut the right between you guys, right between you. Let's play this little part here.
What you're hearing at the end is a 3-vehicle crash at, you think 90, could have been, well, whatever it was.
I think the last I called out was 95. So
Yeah.
we're unintentionally slowing down here.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Freaking shut the freeway down here. I want to shut the freeway down. Freaking let the SO know. Please do not try to ram this vehicle here.
10-4.
Poor Pat's got to get somebody to call or she's got to hit the SO dispatcher saying, would you please not try to ram this vehicle? Please do not ram this vehicle. That's John.
We've got a crash here on the freeway just by the little valley.
83 na Via de la Valle.
Okay, this pause that everybody is not, you're not hearing anybody. That's because there is dust and just everything is going everywhere. And I have split through the middle of this crash net, which is behind me. And fortunately, the good Lord kept me safe, because I was able to put out, hey, there's a crash on the freeway here. And that's the supervisor.
Well, Sam.
We need the CHP for chief report.
10-4.
I love Woody at that point. 12 Sam Station, 12 Sam. Yeah, we need the CHP for an action report. Meanwhile, tell them what's going on. Tell the audience what's really happening.
I was now no one was more surprised than I was when the crash occurred. And there were airbags in the cars back then, but I didn't have airbag deployment at that high-speed crash. But like a car came to a stop, and I'm like, I'm alive. I'm not even hurt. So I jumped out of my unit, and one of the passenger in the Firebird demonstrated that he was unaware of the basic laws of natural selection, because he jumped out of the car. And you gotta understand, this looks like a used.
Everybody's alive.
This looks like a car. This looks like a used car lot of cop cars across Interstate 5. There are going to be 15 cop cars there, and this guy jumps out of the car and goes, "Come on, I'll take you on." I mean, I think it was probably close to the single most stupid thing I've seen in my life, because this is an era before there were a lot of helicopters, video crews watching us, and what I would describe as being like a T5 tornado of nightsticks and kellites.
From multiple agencies.
From multiple agencies
at this point.
And he gets swept up to the land of Oz in that tornado. Meanwhile, I've run around to get the driver.
100 miles an hour to a fist fight. That's exactly
what it was.
That's exactly what happened.
And so I ran around to the driver, and I don't know if there's a gun in the car or anything. I mean, we still don't know. This is the problem. And so I tell the driver, get out of the car. And he puts his hands on the steering wheel and he says, I ain't getting out of the car. So I'm not going to argue with anymore. I just kind of step away from the window and punch him as hard as I can in the temple and knock him out. So I'm pulling him out of this. He's a dead weight. I've knocked him out. I'm pulling him across the pavement when the T5 tornado arrives at me. And I guess they figured it looked like he was fighting me or something. So I began getting pummeled, mostly with the flashlights and the nightsticks. And I'm screaming, 832, 832, stop hitting the cop. 832 is the section you would identify yourself as a cop. And then suddenly I stopped getting hit. And then all of a sudden, it's like the Western town in a Clint Eastwood movie where the tumbleweed rolls across the scene. There's nobody there.
Well, hang on. Hold on to that thought real fast because I want to finish the good spot to stop real fast. Okay. This is the part where the public relations is taking place that John's talking about. Nobody, she can't get hold of anybody on the road.
Can you advise which one?
712. 713.
10-4.
So Woody is dispatch is trying to get hold of Woody, who's the supervisor. Woodall, we call him Woody. Amazing human being, amazing cop, and all of this is going down, and she's trying to get him, and he's in the mix. He's like, oh crap. What? What? You know? What? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's a couple of cars involved here. Click. You know.
Well, to fill that up, the silence, all the cops are gone, and the guy who had chosen to fight all the cops is laying on his stomach with a pair of plastic cuffs on. They hadn't even put like regular metal handcuffs on him, and they just left him there.
Flex cuffs.
Yeah,
the other agencies pulled him. You know, who did we end up having? San Diego Sheriff's Department, CHP, Border Patrol, Carlsbad, us. There's like 6 agencies, and it was like, you know, okay, 100 miles an hour to a fist fight. And you have to understand back in those days, oh, a fight? Yeah, I'm in. You know,
why didn't you ask me sooner?
Okay, at the end in San Diego County, there was this rule. Okay, it was called public relations. Okay, and you know, nothing illegal, nothing crazy, nobody, you know, hurt anybody. Everybody was taken into custody, but they put these little plastic handcuffs on this guy, you know, flex cuffs, right? And so John's left there. I come running back to the crash, and John, do you remember that when I was
oh, do I remember that? Because Chris comes running back, and Chris doesn't curse. It's as close as I ever saw him. He wanted to know who the moron was from the sheriff's office who had done that. And the sergeant, the San Diego Sheriff Sergeant goes, well, that was me. And we found out that that was the second time he had wrecked a sheriff's car to stop a pursuit in 24 hours. So yeah. I began calling him the road warrior.
Because, you know, I went past it because I had to for my own life. I mean, I would have been in the middle of everything. And so I come running back, you know, I back up my car. I got the dog still in the back. I jump out of the car and I'm running back and I'm yelling, who was the moron that, you know, tried to cut this thing off or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like John said, this guy, this 3-striper looks over, and I was just 2 at the time. And John, I think we were both senior officers at the time. And he looks over and he goes, that's me, or something, like some stupid thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I turned and I walked over to Woody, and he's like, you know, hey, your car? I said, no, Sergeant, I'm good. I'm good here. But listen to the end here.
10-4, are there any injuries?
Negative.
10-4. Okay, cancel code 33.
Affirmative.
Okay, so now the code 33 means emergency traffic only, meaning clear the air, just, nobody say anything. It's only those vehicles involved or the individuals involved. And our dispatchers are just amazing. I mean, they hit that code 33. Everybody knew that there was something going down here. But one of the things I want to point out was how calm Patty was in dispatch. It's like, yeah, okay, 100 miles an hour. Okay. Yep. Okay. Crash. Okay. Yep. Okay. Can I clear the air? Yeah, affirmative. Clear the air. I.e., there's a lot of other stuff going on, and I need this channel to get things. And that was just life in Oceanside. And Manfred kicked that whole thing off from the very beginning. And I want to finish up just the last part if I can. John, did you have anything you want to say?
No, just that our dispatchers were amazing.
Yeah, they are. Every dispatcher is amazing.
Yeah.
You guys and gals out there, and I say that collectively, you have saved us. I can't tell you how many times you've really saved us in the midst of chaos. And this is a perfect example. She's as calm as all of us out there. And it's just like, okay, when I get off in another 2 hours, let's go have a sandwich.
Hi, it's code 4, cancel code 33. All units, cancel code 33 is code 4.
David, speaking up.
Hey, David.
David, what's the name of our victim on the 245?
Now, you see, this just gives us a little insight that right there was an assault with a deadly weapon. He wants to know the name of the victim on the assault with a deadly weapon.
Brian Hayward.
Brian, if you're listening,
10-4, this appears to be the vehicle.
you just got a shout out.
And 4 station 6, David.
Was that you, John, that just said that?
That was me, too, David.
Okay, I thought it was you.
Saw Sam.
Good morning, 410. I think they make a 10-4. What's the line,
10-4, one of eyes. On station 06, David.
We're already in report writing mode.
6 days.
Reclamation, vehicle on the freeway involved in pursuit is your suspect vehicle. Six, David, did you respond to Leisure Village? Station 03, David.
Did you want me?
Affirmative, Scott 6, David was with you. We've got that suspect vehicle on your 245.
10-4.
That's Manfred. Love that guy.
Station 06, David. Station 06, David. And cover will be on overdose at 4065 Altura, 40.
Don't worry.
Altura.
Yeah.
Already on to the next call.
Cover OFD, the fire department on an overdose, OD. And that was back in 88, guys and gals. That goes to show you how long those problems have been occurring in this country. God bless those families that have lost children through overdose. And of course, Manfred, our dear friend, and thanks, Gunnar, our dear friend Manfred, who started that. And John's next book, Beach Blanket Bedlam, is going to talk a lot about those types of stories. But you've got to get his Service with a Sneer. Order it on Amazon. You will laugh, you will cry, you will laugh, and you will share this to everybody that you know, because this is the real deal. And that's just a sample of some of the things that we had opportunity, to experience in our time. John, I think it's important that people understand, that cops are just regular people. And, with what you went through as a kid, you then had this inspiration to become a law enforcement officer, to help save lives, and you have saved countless lives through your career. And I think today, this younger generation is doing an amazing, amazing job out there, where these guys and gals are out there putting their lives on the line every single day. And, sometimes we critique only because we want them to go home at night.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and, you're hearing, back, this was before terminals in the car. I mean, we had a Motorola thing that
We had a primitive MDT system.
Yeah, we had a primitive MDT at that time.
And nobody used it.
Yeah, right. Right. I ever tell you, I was asked on that committee, when Motorola was going through that, and they asked me, what do I think about the things? I said, nobody's going to use that. And, because the 1199 button, remember the 1199 button?
I remember the 1199 button, because every so often some idiot would press it.
Yeah. And tell everybody what that was.
1199 is a statewide signifier that basically my life is in danger. Roll me all the backup. Whoever hears this needs to roll in the direction of, to come save me. And where they had put this button was like in a place where it was like at the end of this MDT thing, where you would naturally hit it with your notepad or your posse box, your report box. So you would have the accidental hits of the 1199. We had a great question there. What do we do to relax? Choir practice. And I'm not suggesting drinking to excess is a good thing, because it isn't. But when you can debrief with other people who have the same frame of reference. Now, you've heard some of these stories that Chris and I have told. What are some of the things that we have laughingly told you? How scared we were, how terrifying the situation was. In order to verbalize it and to tell the story, it helps diffuse a lot of the fear and the anxiety. The talking was the most therapeutic part of it. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Yeah. And right, our families. For me, it was, the guitar right behind me.
Yeah.
And I try to set an example, not only to my children, but, to my friends, my colleagues, who I admire, to this day, that we're all out there. We all bled the same color blood. And it didn't matter who you were, what you were, religion, creed, or whatever. We didn't care. It was like, okay, we're all in this together. And there's a bond that takes place on the street that, if you think about a war, for an example, these poor guys and gals go to war and they're there for maybe 12 months and they come home. Okay. But I used to use a statistic when I was teaching a class. I would write, 58,000, divided by 10. And then I would ask the class, how many, what does this number represent? And people would go, we're not sure. And here's another great cop right here, Dave Larson.
Dave Larson.
We love this guy. He holds the record for choking people out. I'm telling you, the guy's a machine.
Well, I'd have kept it if I hadn't made detective.
I love my brother here. I mean, we could go on for days just laughing. But John, me, Bob, Dave, everybody, but
And Danny
and Danny, and Julie, where, our Larry Falmina, Julie is his wife. He passed, our brother, and Jack, and Paula. I don't know if Paula's out there, but if you are, we're sending our love. But there's this bond that never goes away. And like we were talking about earlier, it's a new time where we didn't have a lot of the stuff that they have today. We didn't have tasers. We had Dave Larson, who could, drop somebody in a split second, and nobody got hurt.
do the chicken.
You know what I mean? Nobody got hurt. But it was always, we had guys like this, Dan Aarons. I mean, amazing. That guy could talk your eyebrows off. If he got you in the interview room and you had committed a serious crime. Bob, what can I say? Do the chicken. Tell him what the chicken was after you dropped him.
When you applied the carotid sleeper and rendered them unconscious, there was a jerking. The body would jerk and spasmodically, the body like a chicken flapping as they regain consciousness. Yeah,
and so to get back to the thought here is, were we scared at times? Yeah, it was pure. Yeah, there were a lot of times where you'd go, holy crap. Okay, I'm grateful to be here. But when it happens all the time and it becomes, muscle memory, it becomes, you can tell when an officer has lost emotional control, in my opinion, by the amount of adjectives that start coming out of their mouth. And I worked really hard to control my emotions in terms of, I didn't cuss, at least I tried not to. And that helped me, because I thought to myself, why am I going to lower myself to this person that I'm trying to talk them into the car? But we had a philosophy that Oceanside's, at the time back in the day, our motto was where the debris meets the sea. Okay. Am I right, John? And everybody else?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And when the PD would show up, 95% of folks were compliant, even though they started off as being problematic. We were able to calm them down, for lack of a better term, get them off of the bridge, calm them down, and everybody's cool. Okay? And then we could either talk you into the car or we would put you into the car. Yeah, right. And 90% of the people didn't want to go that route. Okay? And that's because we had the volume during those days, those years. There was a lot of volume. And so our family became everybody's family. It wasn't just me. It was Larry and Julie. It was John and Joyce and all of our families, and Paula and Jack and, Julie and Larry. We knew, and, Joe and Gloria, we knew each other's families. And we used to have picnics. When I started with OPD, remember the OPD picnics where all the families would come, and it wasn't just an officer.
And the Christmas party.
Which I wish the POA would bring back, to be honest with you.
The old one where it was potluck. One thing I want to dovetail on that you said, Chris, the question about fear, and you talked about the sheer volume of calls we went to. And Bob Gilliam just posted something very prescient. First of all, when you're in these situations on a daily basis, it becomes part of your normal environment. And so the familiarity takes some of the fear out of it. But Bob also observed that there was a certain allure in going right up to the edge and knowing you were dicing with death. You were throwing dice, playing craps with death, and you came away from it and you cheated death. And I'm not suggesting reckless behavior, but I'm just talking about even being cautious. There was seldom a shift in Oceanside in that era where there wasn't a chance that your life wasn't in danger. And you just get used to it. Irene wants to know what I would do different today. I'd still go into cop work. I love cop work. It's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. The only thing I do different is I'd stay in the detective bureau because I loved being a homicide detective. But at the time I was pursuing promotion, and I made my terminal rank of sergeant. I couldn't be a lieutenant because my hairline was already so high that the lobotomy scars would show. So that's what I would do different.
You are so funny. These one-liners, they're just slip them right in there. And and that was the other thing that we had, fun. We had fun.
Yes.
The job was fun. And you know what? We treated people, everybody got the same respect. It didn't matter. We didn't come at people, today with, hey, take a look at me. You start out, right? What do they say? The first 5 years of John Wayne syndrome, remember? And badge heavy. But those guys got tuned up pretty quickly by senior officers. At least it was on our department.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you didn't step out of bounds because you knew that your partner saw what you were doing. And your partner back then would pull you aside and say, come here. And you know what? You had to take it. You had to take it. And he said, they would say, look, this is what I would do differently. Next time, don't, just remember, you want to go home tonight. Okay. And this is where, like you talked about, one of the questions that came up earlier about how did everybody decompress, with choir practice, et cetera. I mean, even today, one of our esteemed colleagues, this guy is a legend, Chuck Potter.
Oh, yeah.
We love Chuck. He's a legend. That guy is just, even to this day, he still sings karaoke. He's still, he's a Marine. He's been there, done that. And then there's the other side of the coin where these guys would teach you, and they still teach you to this day, what it was like to be a street cop. And this book is that part of that life that John has written here. And John, I am just absolutely honored, one, to be your friend, but two, I hope people go out and get this. And the fact that you asked me to write a little blurb on the back for you just blew me away when you asked me. And I'm eternally grateful for that.
Well, can I just say a couple of words about the book, Chris?
Please.
I want to explain to people.
Absolutely.
This book is self-published. Okay, it's done through a company. I sent this book out to 72 literary agents. And I got some nice rejections. But most people, most of the literary agencies were not interested in a book like this, because in those instances, when I did get a response, it was, nobody's going to read this. And I felt that this was a story that needed to be told and wanted to be told. And I would be honored if you would buy this book, because it's going to provide me with the opportunity to write more books. Beach Blanket Bedlam is about 15 pages from being done right now. And if I can continue to because when I self-publish, it actually costs me money to publish. And then the next book will be called Bring Out Your Dead, which is my years working robbery, homicide, crimes of violence. And I haven't even touched on some of the stuff we've done. Like, for instance, Chris, in book number 4, which is going to be 3 Stripes, You're Out, we'll tell the story of Michael Ziggler at the Beechwood Motel.
Classic.
And Irk.
You can give them a taste of it.
I will give you a taste of it. I was a patrol sergeant, newly crowned, and Chris had made a pedestrian stop on a meth freak, well-known meth freak in Oceanside, named Michael Ziggler. And it was near the Beechwood Motel, which was on 6th Street at Pacific, which now has some different name. And Michael Ziggler was just a whiny meth freak. And I know, I'm certain that Bob will remember him, and Dave, I'm certain Dave Larson will remember him. I mean, you weren't anybody who worked downtown Oceanside who hadn't arrested Michael Ziggler. So I got out of the car to cover Chris on the stop, and we both knew that Michael Ziggler was going to go to jail for being under the influence of methamphetamine. And Michael starts getting whiny and goes, "Oh, come on, Mr. McDonough, come on. I'm trying to get clean. I gave it up." And Chris says something like, "What, this morning?" "No, man. Come on, be cool. I'm trying to get clean." And so when he notices that his begging is not making any inroads, he suddenly jumps at Chris, shoves Chris back against the side of the car, and then starts running down the alley. So I go after him with my nightstick out, and we're in foot pursuit down the alley when Chris's dog passes me like I'm the Goodyear blimp and Irk is like the Concorde, just shoo, a brown streak.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun.
And he hits Ziggler in the hip. And Ziggler gets disoriented, spins around, and then turns to sprint again. And Chris was there, he can attest to this. God is my witness. He runs full bore into a cinder block wall. This is like a Roadrunner cartoon.
It's right out of the car.
I mean,
right
the coyote, he just...
right out of Warner Brothers.
So at this point, he tries to run again. Irk bites him. By this point, Mr. Ziggler is disoriented. And he then turns to run into the telephone pole.
Like the cartoon.
Again, like the cartoon.
Literally, his arms, he hit the pole dead center, and his arms went to the other side of it. Remember,
It was, if you saw this, you'd think it's a poorly contrived comedy routine.
Right.
And at this point, I don't want to hit Ziggler because I'm laughing too hard. And at this point, Ziggler then slides to the ground and begins delivering kicks at Irk. So I put my nightstick away, and Chris runs up, and we are begging Ziggler, "Don't kick the dog, and the dog won't bite you."
Yep.
And Ziggler keeps kicking at the dog, and Irk's having a fine old time. Irk jumps out of the way and bites Ziggler, and Ziggler tries to bite. Irk tries to bite him again, and finally, Ziggler runs out of energy. Because he's trying to keep he started the encounter with jeans, and now he's wearing short shorts, hot pants, and he's got some bites. And Chris gets the leash on Irk, and Chris and I are laughing. We probably shouldn't, laughing at another human's misfortune, but he brought it on himself. And just watching the scenario was like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. And Ziggler looks up at us and says, "That dog is from hell." And yeah, that was Irk. Oh,
Irk's a jerk. He took Duffield out, or excuse me, Ziggler out. This was
Duffield, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Paul Duffield.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a commendation for that, where Corky said, I want you to send your dog in. I'm like, well, I can't send the dog in because that guy has a gun, and
barricaded. Yeah,
it was a barricaded situation. Anyway, I end up sending the dog in, and the bad guy came up out of the counter, capped a couple rounds off at us, and they were wad cutters. The rounds going off, and anyway, Irk took the guy out at the back of the store. His name was Paul Duffield, and Dave knows he was a dog handler as well, and he got a chance to eat people, legally. And long story short, the suspect runs to the back of the store, and Sean Sullivan was on the roof at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the suspect, Paul Duffield's trying to hit the vent, the skylight, and he's trying to get through the skylight. And Sean comes on the radio and says, "Hey, this guy has a gun. He's got a gun." And so the suspect dropped back down to the floor, and it was just at that time, it was Clint Johnson, myself, Rich Davis, Kaiser, and Clint slides the door open at Jerry's Military. And as the door slides open, Duffield comes up over the counter, and boom, 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 he caps 4 rounds off. I let the dog go. I let Irk go. Irk goes in, and as Duffield is running, he turns and he starts running towards the back of the store. Irk knocks him down and takes him down. Well, as we all know, the PD guys, you have to go where your dog goes as a dog handler, and so I'm in literally on top of this guy, probably about 10 feet, 10 feet away from him. And Irk is on the bite, and he's yelling, "Ma, ma, 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 ma." And he's a deaf mute, and his name was Paul Duffield. And he takes the gun.
And he was a burglar.
He's a burglar with armed, and who just capped rounds at us. And he takes the gun and he puts it in his mouth, and he's yelling, "Mom, mom, 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 mom," right? And I'm on him, and I'm me and the dog, and I call Irk out, and I down him next to me, and now it's a standoff with this guy. And he takes the weapon and he moves it and he puts it right here. And he's going, "Ma, ma, ma, ma." And I'm like, "Hey guys, we got a problem here, deaf mute, we got a situation." And he's pointing right with his left hand, "Ma, ma, ma, ma," to the Coke machine. And this is now it calmed down a little bit. Right. So RL.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at this. Let me apologize in advance.
This guy's holding himself hostage, okay? And Rich Davis, he's going, "Ma, ma, ma." And I said to Rich, "Rich, he wants a Coke. Get him a Coke. Get him a Coke." Okay. Now you have to know RL. Okay. Rich Davis only drinks Dr. Pepper. I need Dr. Pepper as a sponsor.
Okay. Yeah, they'd love this story connected with it.
Yeah, I bet they would. Yeah. So I hear the clunk, 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 right? And I look over and I see this can rolling towards him, and it's a Dr. Pepper. And I'm like, dude, in my head, I'm like, "Rich, he wants a Coke." Okay. And this guy's holding the weapon right here. And he looks over looks down at the Dr. Pepper coming at him, and he leans back against this, like a bookshelf. There was this huge bookshelf, and there was a guitar case at the top of the bookshelf. He hits the back of the bookshelf, and all of a sudden this guitar case, it's like slow motion, comes down, and it's falling and it's falling and it's falling. And he's looking over at me, and he's looking down at the soda, and he looks back up at me, and all of a sudden the guitar case hits his feet, and he didn't see it coming, and boom. It was bad. And it was over. I mean, within 2 seconds, it was over. And I looked over at RL, and he didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. We backed off. The guy was obviously gone. Okay. Very sad, horrible. I walk outside, and Corky goes, "Why did you shoot him?" I was like, "What?" He goes, "Why did you shoot him?" I said, "What are you talking about? Are you not with us on this incident here? What are you talking about? The guy, weren't you just in there?" He goes, "No, I've been out here, talking." And I said, "Well, yeah." Okay. Huh? Yeah. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Okay. So the next day, it's in all the papers, cops killed deaf mute. Okay. And all this other stuff. And I ended up, I get this commendation. Anyway, I've got it in here.
I'm a pepper, you're a pepper.
Right. You know what? I'm just reading through my stuff here. But anyway, long story short, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And by the way, John, I just read a commendation that you gave me in March of '88. And this is from Sergeant John Lamb, Night Watch. Look at this. I swear to I wasn't looking for this.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you can see it.
No, I can't read it. What did I cite you for?
A letter of commendation for I responded to the Great American First Savings at 3156 Vista Way. Report of a robbery at the automatic teller machine.
This was the series, the ATM robbery series. I remember this.
A week of
Gary Church was out there.
It says it preceded weeks, a series of violent armed robberies that occurred in area banks. And anyway, I made contact with the subject who was subsequently arrested for the robbery, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, you found this guy was lurking around the ATM, and when you got to his car, you found his mask and a gun. That's exactly right.
That's right. I do remember this.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go.
Another 5 minutes with John Lamb.
So yeah, I do. And it was important to me to write those commendations because that was a good piece of police work. And all too often, police supervisors don't write commendations. But no, I remember that exactly because Gary Church was out there with you.
Yep. Yeah.
Another old cop.
Yeah. And so that was, these are always good and fun to, we should do a lot more of these things, guys and gals. And I've had you now for 2 hours, John. So everybody, I need you to go buy Service with a Sneer. The link is below. John, you get the final word for this evening's program. And thank you so very much for being with us this evening.
It has been my pleasure. And I would second what you just said, Chris. You've had people who have posted stuff, former comrades, any one of these guys who posted on here, Bob Gilliam, Dan Aarons, Dave Larson, any of these guys could sit here in this position and tell every hair-raising stories, different ones, just simply because Oceanside was an amazing place to work.
It is.
And
It
you
still
can do
is.
it with anybody.
It still is.
And it still is, but it is not, it's been cleaned up. And it's not like when we were working there. I'm not saying anything deprecating about the department. I'm just saying the city itself is far more civilized. But it was my treat. I always felt that I was the luckiest SOB going, that I got to be a California cop. And I had a fun career. And I want to share in this book how cops actually think. I try and pull no punches. There are a couple of stories in this book, Service with a Sneer, that I'll tell you right now are grotesque. They're horrifying, but they are real. And every cop that you've seen post on here, and Chris, we've seen stuff that's the material of nightmares. Yet, here we are laughing. Here we are having a good time. So it would be my honor if you read my book. And I've got a Facebook page. If you want to exchange messages with me or friend me, it's just John Lamb. And I post, if you were to go to my Facebook page, I've got pictures of detective operations we worked from back in the 80s and 90s, and I would it would be my honor if you read my book. And if we do enough, Beach Blanket Bedlam comes next.
It's on its way.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, John. We love you all. Thank you, everybody who's been here. Buddy says goodnight. Irk was okay. He was not shot. Just
And
for
my Andy came out for briefly. Somebody said that he had a beautiful feathered tail. My golden came in.
Oh.
Whoever it was that observed his tail, his name is Andy, and he says that once we're off the air here, Dad has to give him pieces of 100% beef Franks.
And just remember, get out there, vote early. They're eating the cats in Ohio. Let's save the cats. So God bless you all, and aloha. Have a good evening, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for being with us for this.
Thank you all.
With John Lamb.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in a while. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.